Hi, I'm James Baxter. I'm Director of Character Animation at Netflix, and today we're going to talk about cartoons. We're going to make a flipbook, and I'm going to tell you just a little bit about how animation works. Um, if I flip this flipbook, you'll be able to see the cat move. And this is not that different from how a lot of animation is done even today. Netflix has a lot of shows, and some of them are made with drawings like this, but some of them are made a little bit differently. Things like Shaun the Sheep are actually made with puppets, using little models, and the animator positions them frame by frame to make the movement. Something like The Willoughbys is made using computer models, and the animator moves the puppet, but it's all inside the computer. Shows like Hilda use drawings, but those drawings are made up of lots of different parts, and the animator can push and pull and stretch those drawings around using the computer program. And then there's shows like Klaus, which is done a little bit more like a flipbook, using lots and lots of individual drawings. Now, I actually have a piece of animation that's all made of individual drawings right here. And you can see that it's bigger than a regular flipbook, but it's a picture of a little pig. And if I flip it like a flipbook, you can see that he does a great big sneeze like that, a chew. And then he falls down on his backside. Now, when animators do work like this on paper, they work at a desk like this one. And you see these little holes at the bottom right here. These little holes go over these little pegs at the bottom here. And that lets the animator keep all the drawings together. And there's even a little light at the back which they can use so they can actually see through all the drawings like that. I'm going to turn off the light right now. This way I can work on the animation like this, and I can see all the drawings, and I can work on them to make sure it's right. And then when you shoot it, it comes out looking like this. So that's how that works. So let's make another flipbook, if you like. You can, I'll talk you through it, and we'll make another flipbook. So you can use like these little post-it notepads. They're only about $1, so they're pretty easy to get hold of. And I would advise you not to ruin anybody else's books or pads without their express permission. So it's good to probably use something like this instead. I sometimes like to take a little clip and put it on the top just so the pages don't get, ripped off by mistake. And then you can draw on the bottom. So the important thing to remember actually about starting one of these flipbooks is to start at the back and work your way to the front. That way, when you do a drawing and you put the next little sheet of paper down, you can see through it and you can kind of see the other drawing underneath, and you can make those little changes which makes the movement happen. So starting at the bottom is what you need to do. Let me get my pen. And I think I'm going to do a guy bouncing on a springboard and splashing into a pool. That's, I think, what we're going to do right now. So if I start at the back here, and I'm actually going to make this clip run at 2 times speed. So this is actually twice as fast as I can really draw. That way it'll make it go a bit quicker. I'll be able to do it in like 10 minutes instead of 20 minutes. So I'm going to draw this little guy on his springboard for a couple of times, just in the same place. And then I'm going to start to gradually move him down as he gets ready to jump. So he's going to do one jump and then a big jump. So you can see I'm moving him down and bending his knees, and then the springboard that he's on is going to start bending down as well as he puts his weight on it. And then I'm going to get these drawings right down at the bottom here to be really kind of close together. In other words, I don't want them to be very much change happening. Now the One of the big secrets in animation is that if you have a big change happening between the drawings, then the movement goes fast. And if you have a tiny, tiny change between the drawings, then the movement goes slow. So when he jumps up here, I'm going to do a big change. You see how high up I'm doing his head? And I'm stretching out his body as he jumps. That's a big change. So he's going to go fast at this point. But then as he starts to get to the top, he's going to put his knee up there, and the springboard is going to start coming back a little bit. But as he starts coming to the top, those drawings are going to get, crammed closer and closer together, and that way it'll go slow. So he springs off fast, and then he hangs in the air slow for just a moment, just a few drawings, before he starts to come down again. And now he's just starting to come down, but the drawings are very close together, and then they're going to start getting a little bit further apart as he starts to drop. The board is still bouncing around a little bit, but now he's just starting to drop, and you can see I'm making a bigger space in between those drawings, and his foot is starting to come down, his extra foot is starting to come down, and that's a difficult arm I just drew to make his arm go to the other side. Now he's contacting the board again, so his knees begin to bend, and his arm is sticking out the back, and now he's getting ready to do his really big jump. So he did a little jump, and now he's going to do a big jump. So the board is going to bend down all the way. Gosh, I wonder how big. He's kind of getting a bit small. I'm going to have to make sure he doesn't get too small. But I want a lot of time with him squashed down, getting ready to jump. So these drawings down here are going to be all sort of crammed together, really tightly together, without much change happening between them, as that board really bends and stores up all that energy for him to use to spring off it. So I think we're about done with all the squash drawings, and now I'm going to catapult him up into the air. So I've got one drawing where he just starts to move a little bit up, and then the next one I'm going to do, he's going to move a lot up. So now he's all stretched out. So again, this is now happening fast. Big spaces in between the drawings, and it goes fast. Now he's bounced all the way up into the air, and the springboard is going to start coming back. And then at the top, he needs to start to slow down again. So the drawings are going to get a little bit more crammed together, and I'm going to start bending him in the middle. I'm going to do this thing that divers call a pike position. It's not going to be a very good one. But he's going to bend his body in the middle and kind of almost touch his toes before he dives into the pool. And all the way through this part, the springboard itself is going to be bouncing back and forth. After he left it, it's kind of going to go and bounce up and down. So every two drawings I'm making the springboard bounce up and down. Now he's bending, and he's kind of hovering in midair. But when you flip it really fast, it won't look like he stays there. He'll just look like he hangs in the air just a little bit before he starts to come down. Now he's all bent in the middle. And now we're going to start to, I think, one more drawing. And then we're going to start to have him fall down into the pool. So his head's going to start going down, and his feet are going to start going up, and each space that he takes is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as he accelerates, as he gets faster and faster down into the pool. So now his head is falling quite a lot, and his feet are up in the air, and his hands start to stretch out. And now I'm going to stretch him all the way out. Get his hands in front. It's good to work with stick figures because, they're much easier to draw, than like fancy drawings, and you can do them really quickly. Now he's all stretched out, and now he's going to disappear off the paper. And I got to make sure I keep doing these springboards. So now it's just his feet, and then maybe one more drawing of his feet before he disappears altogether. And then I think I'm going to have to animate some kind of splash of water. So now he's gone, and let's see, let's do like 2 or 3 drawings of just the board by itself before the splash comes up. Like, you know, it's as if the water was off the page. So let's start doing the splash. So I'm going to do like this kind of flower shape as the water starts to bounce up. And it's going to move fairly fast, so there's a pretty big space in between these drawings in here. And just like the diver, it's going to come up fast, and then it's going to slow down a little bit at the top. And it's also going to start sort of separating into little droplets of water as it gets to the top. Let's see, almost at the top now, I think. And the flower shape is sort of growing and spreading. And then these water droplets are going to have to start to fall. So now you can see like all these little drops are all sort of separate, and the front of this water splash is going to start to fall, and I got to keep remembering to do the board. This is the slow part where it's hovering at the top before it falls. Actually, there's nothing special about doing a guy jumping on a springboard. You could do whatever you want in a flipbook. You could animate, say, you could animate words forming. You know, you could animate, you know, you could make a happy birthday card for somebody and have the words happy birthday form in little letters and then all turn into bubbles or something. You could animate a horse sprouting wings and flying away. You could do whatever you feel like doing. There's really no limit to what you could do other than your imagination. I just picked a guy jumping on a springboard because I think I remember actually doing it when I was a kid. You can see I'm doing this sort of fun thing with the splash where this middle part comes up after the main splash, which is what happens with water splashes often. There's like this part that comes up in the middle, you know, before it ends up dropping. And you don't just have to use a black pen like I'm using either. You could use colored pencils and do all sorts of lovely things if you wanted to. There really is no limits to what you can do. So I'm almost done here. I think I just have to get this last water splash to drop down. Again, I'm making those spaces in between those drawings as these drops are falling. They get bigger and bigger and bigger as they fall. And then I think this will be the last one. Maybe just one more with one of those drops on it. I'm gonna get these drops off of the page. Last one. Okay. And now I think I'm gonna do just a couple of boards just there with empty space, and we should be done. All right, let's flip it. This is actually my favorite part of animation, is when you either flip the book or you press play and you see if it works. Here he goes, jumps up and splashes down into the pool. I like it. I think it works pretty good. This actually brings up a pretty interesting point. Things that are jumping up and down behave very much the same as balls when they bounce around. And one of the very first things that you learn if you're an animation student is to do a bouncing ball. That's kind of like one of the first lessons that they teach you in animation school. So we're going to do that right now, and I'm going to teach you how to do a bouncing ball. But I'm not going to do it on paper. I'm going to draw it on a tablet, and for that I need to switch out my desk. And the cool thing is that this disc actually comes off the desk, and I can put my digital drawing tablet in this space. So I'm just going to cut while I do that. Ta-da! Magic. So this is my digital Wacom drawing tablet. Now, you don't have to use anything like this fancy. You could do animation on an iPad or pretty much anything that you can draw on with a stylus or even your finger. Let's turn it on. So I'm going to be using a program called TV Paint, which is also pretty fancy, but there are other programs that you can get for free online, such as Krita, which is good, and there's Pencil 2D, which is also another free software that you can get. There's also Animation Paper and OpenToons, so there's lots of things that you can get online for you to do this kind of thing, but I'm going to be using TV Paint, and let's do a bouncing ball. I got my stylus. Let's get going. So actually the first thing I'm going to do is create kind of a plan drawing. So I'm going to draw myself kind of a quick ground on the screen here. And then I'm going to like create a path for my bouncing ball to go along. And I'm drawing this very specific shape. It's the shape that things fly through when they leave the ground. And it's important to remember this is not like a circle. It's not a half circle. It's much more like sort of the pointy end of an egg. And it actually has a special name. It's called a parabola. So I'm going to do one nice big parabola for the bouncing ball, and then another couple of little ones as the ball kind of does little bounces at the end. So that's going to be my plan drawing. And now I'm going to start doing the actual ball animation. So I get myself a separate level, and you can see down the bottom I've got like a timeline where I can plan my drawings out, and you can see the drawings. So I'm going to do a drawing of the ball being squashed, you know, when it first hits the ground, right there. And then about 16 drawings later, I'm going to do another one for the end of the first bounce. So at around 16 frames or drawings later, that's where I'm going to put the next one. And then I'll be filling in the gaps in between these two extreme poses. So right slap bang in the middle in time, you can see down in the bottom, I've got the ball right at the top of the arc as it flies through the air. I'm going to put it right up there in the top. Then I'm going to break this down and do another drawing halfway in time between it being down and it being up, but I'm going to put it in a very special place. I'm going to, even though it's halfway in time, it's at, you know, I think this might actually be a bit too close. It's actually closer to the top one as far as its up and down movement goes. So it spends more time being at the top than it does doing the bounce. And then I'm going to do this drawing here, which is it on its way down, which is really sort of a mirror image of those two things. Now I'm going to break it down even further and do drawings that fit in between these ones. So again, I'm going to be favoring all the drawings that are at the top and giving a bigger space between that one and the bottom one. Then I'm going to fill in this one right here, and again, this is going to be favoring or closer to the one at the top. Now it's kind of closer to in terms of its up and down position, but it's actually pretty even in terms of its side to side position. So the ball actually goes through the air from left to right at a pretty regular speed, but its up and down movement is where it slows down and speeds up. So I'm filling in these drawings to get it on every other frame now. Animators call this being on twos, because every drawing is on there for 2 frames. But I'm going to fill in all the frames. So I'm actually going to put this all onto ones. If I go back to this planning sketch right now and just kind of like put little dots where the center of the balls are, I want you to see this because it'll demonstrate the pattern that you're looking for. Now, you don't have to have your ball jump every 16 frames. It could be longer, you know, if it's a bigger ball, or it could be less time, like 8 frames, if it's a smaller ball, perhaps. But I've got these 16 frames going, and you can see that pattern of acceleration with those dots. Now I'm going to fill in these extra frames, and I think I might just kind of like stretch that one out a little bit because it's going really, really fast, and it's rebounding off the floor. And I'm putting in this one here, again, constantly sort of favoring the ones at the top. Now, I'm not particularly great at drawing circles, as you can see, and it doesn't really matter. As long as they're sort of roughly in the right place, that's what matters, is trying to get the drawings to be in the right place, rather than them looking like perfect circles. So I've got all these ones crammed in close at the top, and then as I fill in the gaps as we go along, the gaps are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So you notice I can see some of the other drawings here. The ones behind are in green and the ones in front are in red, and that gives me a really good idea of exactly where to place these drawings so that the movement will all flow together, so that there aren't weird big gaps or small gaps where I don't want them. I'm trying to control how big the gaps are between the drawings. So let's do the next bounce, and let's say if that first one was 16 frames, let's go out around 10 frames for the next one. So I'm going to do the same approach where I will draw the next bounce that it takes, the drawing where it hits the ground once again, but I'm not going to squash it so much this time because it's not falling very far. And again, halfway in time, I'm going to place this drawing where it's right at the top of the arc, right at the crest. And I'm going to follow the exact sort of same procedure where I'm going to fill in drawings in between these extreme drawings so we get the motion to be nice and smooth. Again, favoring the ones at the top so you get the ball going slower as it crests the wave, and then it goes faster as it hits the ground and as it rebounds from the ground. I've got two more drawings to fit in here, and you know what, I think the spacing is not really perfect in here, but hopefully it'll be good enough. And then this one gets very, very close, so it goes very, very slowly right in here. Now, just like the other bounce that I did, I'm looking very carefully at the spacing of the other drawings as I slot these ones in between them to make sure that all the spaces make sense with each other as the ball gets faster and the ball gets slower. So that's 2 bounces done. So let's just move on and do the last little one. So we did 16 frames for the first one and 10 frames for the second one. So let's do like 5 frames for the third one. So I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to put in that last drawing where it hits the ground again and work between them. 5 frames is a little different because it's an odd number, so it's going to make doing the part in the middle a little bit trickier because there's no one frame right in the middle. So I'm going to do a drawing slightly off from the middle and another one just behind it, which is slightly off from the middle, and that will be my top of the arc. And then just like before, I'm going to favor those top drawings with the other ones as it goes in there like that. So we're almost done. I'm going to be filling in some drawings at the very beginning and the very end just to get the ball on and off the screen. But this exercise is really something to kind of like teach you a little bit about how fast things go when you draw them, like what are the kind of spaces you might need in between drawings for how fast it goes, and what things look like when they go through the air. And it's a really good exercise to kind of get used to doing lots of drawings to make things move. After you've kind of got the hang of it a little bit, for like how many drawings you have to do and what happens like when they get faster and get slower, then you can start doing more fun things like the little pig test that I showed you, because animation is really all about telling stories and having fun with characters, and it's not just about bouncing balls. But doing exercises like this is actually a really good way to sort of get into just the method of doing lots of drawings to make something happen. I think we're about done. Let's have a go at testing this. Okay, now's the moment of truth, the part I like. So let's press play and see if it works. The first thing I'm going to do actually is just get rid of this little background planning drawing so we can see the ball all by itself, and then, all right, bouncing ball. So you can see how it sort of hangs in the air and then does it sort of bounce kind of fast. I think that works pretty good. Nice. Well, that's my talk for today. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about animation. I certainly enjoyed doing it, and I've been doing this for about 30 years. Anyway, if you are getting into animation, I really hope you enjoy yourselves in your journey, and I hope to talk to you again.